Today is Saturday, December 2nd, and we're talking about artificial intelligence. But this time, it's not really about the technology itself, but about the legal issues surrounding it. Because remember, all kinds of content creators are suing the companies behind AI. Think well-known authors like John Grisham, Jodi Picoult, George R.R. Martin, Sarah Silverman, and more have filed lawsuits. Their argument is that AI companies scraped their copyrighted materials from the internet without permission as part of the text training process. So is AI stealing their work to spit out answers for us? And what's the chance something might actually change about how things are done in the future? Here to help us make sense of it all is Ruth Carter, an Arizona attorney and authority on intellectual property, business law, and internet law. Ruth uses plain English to explain how the law applies to real-life situations on their website called Geek Law Firm. We'll also get into privacy concerns, discuss who is liable for AI-created content if something goes awry, and what, if anything, should you keep in mind before using AI tools? Welcome to the Newsworthy Special Edition Saturday, when we sit down with a different expert or celebrity every Saturday to talk about something in the news. Don't forget to tune in every Monday through Friday for our regular episodes, where we provide all the day's news in 10 minutes. I'm Erica Mandy. It's now time for today's Special Edition Saturday. Ruth Carter, thank you so much for joining us here on the Newsworthy.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's first just make sure everyone understands the basics of why copyright has become a big issue with artificial intelligence. Why is this a concern?
One of the big issues when it comes to AI and copyright is the fact that in the US, if a machine created it, there's no copyright, and the work automatically goes into the public domain where anybody can use it without needing your permission.
It gets tricky because these machines were trained on information from real people. So some of these authors, for example, are arguing that their books were used to train the AI, and then the AI is using that information to then create things that then has no copyright, to your point. Or maybe artists are saying they're using our images to be trained and then using elements of our images to create their own image that I get no credit for. So is that kind of what's going on in terms of some of these lawsuits, and do they have a point?
So that's part of it. When you own a copyright, you get to control where your works are copied and what derivative works can be made from them. And so when you train an AI, you are putting copies of work into the machine. What these creators are saying in their lawsuits is, hey, you made a copy of my work without buying a license. And then they're asserting that the output from the AI are derivative works that they have control over what gets made, not the AI or the person telling the AI what to create. So there's a lot of questions about, is this a violation of the copyright holder's rights? There are many pending lawsuits, and lawsuits tend to move slower than molasses. So we may not have clear answers on this for years.
Yeah, and the law isn't totally clear, right? Because technology seems to move faster than the law.
Exactly. And then it gets even more complicated because there are some countries where there is copyright given to what the AI creates. And so there could be questions down the road over where was the work created and which country's copyright law applies. And it's a headache waiting to happen, and possibly a whole lot of business for the lawyers.
I mean, should or could there be any sort of model where creators get paid sort of like they do on Spotify? You know, anytime we reference your book or a song or a piece of art for an answer or an image, that those creators get paid somehow?
Maybe. But then with some of this AI stuff, it's hard to know which works it pulled from while it was being trained to create the outputs. So it may not know how to backtrack to figure out which images were used or what books or whatever, what content was used to create the output. And then there's the question of, well, did they copy the person's original authorship, which is protected by copyright, or did they just copy an idea? Like if you said, hey, make me a sunflower, and it produces a picture of a sunflower, well, all sunflowers look about the same because that's what a sunflower looks like. You just copied the fact of the flower. So it's very challenging.
And while, to your point that it's taking so long, what comes to mind for me is, Uber not asking for permission, but asking for forgiveness. And by the time cities started asking questions about it, so many consumers were using it that it was like, you can't really take it away. People are already using AI. AI has already been trained. What role or impact is that going to have on the eventual outcomes of these lawsuits and these issues?
I don't think it's going to have an impact on the users of the AI. What I think might happen is if the creators prevail, they're going to get a payout from the AI company. And a lot of these lawsuits are class actions. So there's going to be, everyone gets that tiny, 85-cent check in the class. And so they will get a payout as some type of, compensation for, if your work's been used to train the AI, here's your, licensing compensation check.
But maybe no changes to the technology itself or how it works. Are there any solutions?
I'm sure there are lots of solutions. The question is how many of them are viable, and from a business perspective, how many of them are profitable. There could be changes in the future for how future AI is trained and whether or not permissions have to be obtained in advance and things like that. It's big gray area. But on the flip side, the court could come back and say, creators, your rights haven't been violated. So AI companies continue on as you have because you haven't done anything wrong.
What do you think some of the long-term consequences or impacts will be for content creators, regardless of the outcomes of these?
Oh, that is so hard to predict. But one thing I have wondered, remember when influencers started to become a bigger thing and the FTC started requiring everyone to indicate sponsored content using the hashtag ad, notifying people when there were affiliate links? I wouldn't be surprised if there is a requirement down the road that you have to disclose when something is created by AI. But that raises the question of, well, how much AI? If it's just 100%, or what if the AI made the first draft and you edited it? Do you have to disclose that? Or if you wrote the first draft and you just had the AI kind of punch it up a little bit, does that have to be disclosed? So there are no easy answers.
We've all seen that trend on Instagram when people use AI apps to create a bunch of fake photos of themselves. But does this violate copyright? And should we rethink using these tools? Ruth Carter offers advice. Plus, since AI is in that legal gray area and can even be used for harm, our guest shares how you can minimize your own risk and the AI-generated content to watch out for in next year's elections. That and more just ahead. But first, a quick break for our sponsors. I love it when I can be that person who gives a thoughtful and unique gift. But the truth is, I just don't have a ton of time and don't want all that added stress. That's why I love Uncommon Goods. It is the best of both worlds. Uncommon Goods does the hard work for you, scouring the globe for the most remarkable and truly unique gifts for everyone on your list. And you get the convenience of just browsing online and choosing your favorites that are still thoughtful. Because whether your person is a coffee, wine, or book lover, a gardener or a chef, a hiker, traveler, entertainer, or homebody, there is something for everyone. It's such an easy way to support artists and small independent businesses too. And with every purchase you make at Uncommon Goods, they give back $1 to a nonprofit partner of your choice. They've donated more than $2.5 million to date. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/newsworthy. That's uncommongoods.com/newsworthy for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods, we're all out of the ordinary. This episode is also brought to you by CastleFlex. If you are looking to gift yourself or a loved one improved health this holiday season, then consider CastleFlex. Because I can tell you from experience, it takes your daily stretching routine to a whole other level. My back often feels sore after lifting my toddler and having to run after him, but I can really tell the difference when I use my CastleFlex. My body feels more mobile, lighter, and just overall better, which then gives me more all-around energy. And here's an added bonus. CastleFlex is now HSA, FSA eligible. Remember, those funds are often use it or lose it by the end of the year, so this is a great option. Also special this holiday season, CastleFlex is allowing returns until after the holidays, so you have until January 15th, so you can buy now and gift it later without any worry. Although, listen, they have a less than 1% return rate anyway, so you probably won't even need to use that. Learn more at CastleFlex, flex with 2 X's, castleflex.com, and be sure to use our code NEWS12 for 10% off. Again, follow the link in our episode notes and use the code NEWS12 to get 10% off. Okay, now back to our conversation. What are your thoughts similarly to consumers using some of these AI products, like such as people are posting on Instagram, like AI created this many versions of me, from like a pretend high school graduate photo. There's some art like creators who are saying, in order to come up with that, they're violating copyright. So do you think consumers should just avoid it altogether if they're concerned about that? Or is it just beyond that at this point?
I think the question is, what's the harm being done? If it's people just playing around, why not? If you and your kids want to hang around and play with AI to be like, hey, let's, write a limerick about bubblegum. Okay, fine, go for it. But if you are using AI as a substitute for hiring the artist, like to the point where you're saying, hey, draw me a picture in the style of this artist because we can't hire that. We can't afford to hire them. Don't do that. Pick something that doesn't ride that person's coattails.
It has been interesting, though, to hear that I think it's OpenAI says that it will pay for the copyright lawsuits against its enterprise customers. What does that tell you?
I would assume that if you are running an AI company, that you either think that you're not doing anything wrong or that the amount of money you're going to make before a lawsuit goes the distance, which most don't across the board. Most lawsuits do not make it to trial, that it's more cost effective to fight it and lose than to just not do it at all and leave money on the table.
And beyond copyright, there have also been questions about privacy. What sort of potential privacy concerns are there, and when does it cross into illegal, potentially?
Oh, that gets complicated really quick because along with the issues of privacy are also the rights to your likeness. So like what your face looks like, what your voice sounds like. I think on Spotify, there were people releasing all these songs that were like, hey, give me a song about baguettes, that sounds like Taylor Swift. And people were uploading music that sounds like artists that artist never created. And so that gets into that issue of privacy and likeness, and people are using it for evil to claim that they've kidnapped your child and they're holding them for ransom when really all they did was pull a clip of your kid's voice off their TikTok and your kid's at school perfectly fine and safe. So there are some of those issues going on, and what rights do you really have to your likeness? And to complicate the situation, in the US, these laws are governed at the state level, not the federal level. And so it could get complicated when different states have different rules.
Is there anything that the individual person who maybe is concerned about privacy or doesn't want their information available via AI, is there anything they can do to kind of stop their information from being scraped online?
I think just like when I tell people with copyright, it's not if, but when your stuff gets stolen. Probably with your information, it's not if, but when it gets scraped. The question really is, how much harm could come out of that? And are we doing things as individuals and as, institutions at, in whether it's the company level, government level, to minimize that type of damage? So what I tell people is think about the worst case scenario and then work backwards to see what you can do to mitigate the problem.
Any example of what could be done to prepare or to deal with a situation?
With the election coming up next year, where there's the presidential race, plus a lot of other really important positions open, I have a feeling that deep fakes are going to be an issue. And so as consumers, we can't just believe everything we see just because it's being passed around the internet. And we have to verify the information. And prominent individuals and companies need to be ready and have this as part of their emergency plan, just like you plan for, okay, what if there's a fire? What if there's an earthquake? What if we have this deep fake situation and we have to mitigate it? What steps or processes do we need to have in place? Or what is our plan of action going to be to combat that? And so that way, when something bad happens, you already have the plan of action and you're not starting from scratch of, oh crap, this happened, what do we do?
I did see some of the big tech platforms like Meta and Google for YouTube putting out certain policies or rules, I think Microsoft as well, for specific to political ads and using AI. And do you think that is at least a step in the right direction?
Absolutely. And I think OpenAI put in their terms, you can't use their product to create political content, but I think they might have a hard time enforcing that, because while I could see ChatGPT coming back and saying, I can't create you a video that's full of fake information, but I could see people using it in like a piecemeal way to say, hey, create me a picture that says this, create something that says that, and then compile it themselves. So we have to be aware.
What about liability? If an AI chatbot were to generate, harmful content, maybe that's hate speech or something that convinces someone to do something violent, or, even someone to take their own life or something, who could be held accountable?
I can tell you I've read the terms of service for OpenAI, which owns ChatGPT, and they put a limitation on liability and say, we're not responsible for what the AI machine pumps out. So if it's a situation like where there was a lawyer in New York who asked an AI to write their brief to the court, and they just submitted it, and they didn't verify that the cases cited actually exist, and they found out the hard way that ChatGPT can make cases up out of thin air. And if you ask the AI, hey, are these cases real? It might lie to you. So my solution to that is anytime you're asking an AI to give you facts, verify them, because we don't know what website they scraped to pump out that information. And we know there's a whole lot of crap on the internet. So you can't just take it at face value. I wouldn't expect anything super bad to happen, like an AI telling you to kill yourself and with step-by-step instructions. But if it happened, they've put terms in place so that they don't want to be held responsible for that, because you as an individual are still responsible for your actions. And if we're talking about a child, it's still the responsibility of the parent or guardian to take care of that child.
One last thing I'm curious to hear your take. Earlier this year, we spoke with more of a technical expert who compared AI to nuclear power, saying there's potential for a lot of good, but it can also be extremely destructive. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree completely. I look at it like a hammer. In a builder's hands, it could create a house. In a serial killer's hands, it could destroy lives. It comes down to how are you using it. So I have the exact same perspective on AI as the tech people. It really is going to come down to how are we using it.
For more from Ruth Carter, subscribe to the Ruth and Consequences newsletter. You can also visit their blog called the Geek Law Firm and check out their 3 best-selling books. We have links in our episode notes. Thank you so much for listening today and every day. Our 10-minute news roundups are available every Monday through Friday, and we have these special editions for you every Saturday. So we'll be back on Monday. Until then, have a great weekend.